Hey everybody, I'm going to do a little bit different type of video this time than I normally do. I'm making a vermicomposting bin for my dad for Christmas, so I thought I would kind of walk you through the steps if you want to make one of your own or if you just want to know more about it. So I'm starting a vermicomposting bin, and if you don't know what that is, that's basically composting with worms involved in the process, and you do that in order to speed up the composting process, and also as a byproduct you get an awesome fertilizer you can use for the garden or potted plants or anything like that. Basically, you take, all you really need are plastic bins like these. I would have used ones that I already had, except I didn't have any to use, so I had to go out and buy them. They're about $5 a piece at Lowe's, and it's just your standard Rubbermaid bin. I think it's a 10-gallon, and you use these bins to keep the worms in, and you slowly add your compost into the bin, and the worms will eat the compost and generate some really rich soil that you can add to your garden or your potted plants. And then they also, as another byproduct, they generate their urine and some other moisture in there, generates a liquid that can be diluted and used as a fertilizer. It's actually a really good fertilizer. And you do want to dilute it though. I guess I'll touch on this later, but I think 10 to 1, 10 parts water to 1 part worm tea is what people often call it, worm tea. And then you can use that for your garden. So to start off, you're going to need one bin, and this bin is going to be the very bottom bin. This is where all the worm tea, the liquid, is going to collect. So you'll want it to, you're going to want to put spacers in here to give a little air gap so that the liquid can collect in here. I'm going to just use this plastic tube here and cut it up into several sections. I've already got it sectioned out here. It's about 2.5 inches apart for each one of these. I'm just going to use some silicone caulking, standard stuff, to secure these little round sections in here, and that will allow a gap when I place this bin on top. And that's all you have to do for the bottom bin here. So I will move on to the top bins. These are both going to be done the exact same way, and this is where the worms are going to live. You'll basically, what you need to do is have a bedding for the worms, and then you lay your material that you want to degrade on top of that. And so one of the easiest things to do is to take newspaper, shredded up newspaper, and you want to get it moist. Worms like moisture. They don't want too much where they could drown, but they like it to be pretty moist. So you'll take shredded up newspaper strips, soak them in water, and then wring them out like you would a sponge or something, and just put about 3 inches in the bottom of this tub here, and that's where the worms will bed. So, and then on top of that you'll add a layer of whatever you want to compost, and that should include things like vegetables, coffee grounds, eggshells, most fruits. You don't want to use anything citrus because the acid can upset the worms, and paper, cardboard, stuff like that, anything biodegradable, except for meats. You don't want to put any meat in there, and you don't want to put anything kind of oily. So no meat, no citrus, and other than that you can pretty much put anything in there. Okay, so let's see, where was I? So you put the bedding in, you put your compost in. The worms you'll want to put a lid on this. I have some lids right here. The worms like darkness, so the worms will be working through that, and then the best way to keep it going would to be put another layer of bedding on top of that, and then on top of that more compost, and you just kind of work it up like that, and the worms will keep working through it, and they'll be advancing more towards the surface of this tub as they degrade the material, and near the bottom it will be pretty much pure compost. So that's why we have the second tub. As these tubs will be sitting in here kind of like this. As the worms work through this tub, then you can put this tub on top of the compost there and add bedding on top of here. It'll have a bunch of holes in the bottom. I'll show you that later. And the worms will work up through this tub into this tub, start working through this tub, and as they do that, you can remove the top tub and take out the compost in the middle one and use it. Spread it out, and then you can put that one on top of this and start the cycle over. It's a little bit confusing, but I'll show you a little more clearly later. And so that's that. So to start off, you're going to want to drill holes in the bottom of these two tubs, and I will show you that right now. Okay, so this is the well, not the very bottom, this is the first tub that we'll insert into the very bottom tub. And you can see where I've marked out the holes here. These are going to be drilled with a 1/8 inch drill bit. And this is where the water, or the worm tea, will drain from the tubs. So you want these holes pretty small so the worms don't get through them. And then once I do drill them, I'm going to line them with this it's just an old cotton shirt. I'm going to line the holes on the bottom so the worms can't get out, but the liquid can. And so, just to clarify, this tub, which is where the liquid will drain, will sit inside of this tub, which will catch the liquid. So I'll just start drilling these holes here, like so. And it's basically like that the whole way through. I will also add a couple of holes along the sides here, just for extra drainage, and I'll get back to you when I'm done. Okay, I have the holes drilled now in the bottom piece, and you can see just a couple of 1/16 inch holes throughout the bottom to allow drainage. And then I cut out this cotton here, and I'm just going to line it in the bottom so only the liquid can drain out. The worms won't get out the holes, and the compost will also stay in. And so if I remove this bucket, you can see in the bottom here I've already secured the 4 supports that allow the liquid to stay in the bottom here, and that's what this second bin will sit on. And so that bin is almost done, except right along here I'm going to drill some small, maybe 1/16 inch holes to allow some air in. And that's essential because you want the air in to, I mean, you don't only have worms in there, you have bacteria and other useful organisms that are going to help break down your material, so you want some air in there so they can use that. And so I'll drill some holes along there, 1/16 inch, so the worms don't crawl out them. And then for the next bin, and for any further bins that you'll add onto the system from now on, if you happen to have more, if you need more bins because you have a lot of output, I'm going to drill 1/4 inch holes pretty much at all of these places in this bin, including these side areas right here. And this bin will sit in after this middle bin has some compost going. This bin will sit right on top, and the worms will crawl up into it through these bigger holes. So these are going to be at least 1/4 inch in diameter to allow the worms to crawl up into it and continue the process. So I'll get to doing that right now. I'll just show you one hole here. So, big enough for a worm to crawl up into. That's the idea. And so I'll finish doing those holes and I'll get back to you. Okay, I've got all the holes drilled. You can see here the ventilation holes along this second bucket, which allow for air to get in. And this is the inside. See the small holes there? And this is the next bucket. And it has the air holes on the side as well. And it's got the big holes to allow the worms to move up into here. And if you ever wanted to add more buckets or bins to this system, you would make them just like this one, so the worms can keep passing up and so they have air. And on top of that, whenever it's in use, you always want to have it covered because the worms like the darkness. But if you do have a problem where the worms are trying to crawl out of the bin, you can actually put a light above this because the worms don't like the light and they'll go back into the bin. But what that should tell you maybe is that the worms aren't happy. So maybe whatever you're putting in there they don't like, or they don't have enough food. So they're going out to look for more food, which means you need to put more anything in. Really, even newspaper bedding would be better than nothing because they still eat that as well. So that's that. Get this bin out real quick. Like I said, this is your bottom bin with the holes for drainage, and they're covered so that the worms and the compost doesn't get out. You fill 3 inches of moist newspaper, shredded newspaper for the bedding. Put your compost on, whatever you want to compost, no meats, no citrus. And then another layer of bedding over that. It's always a good idea to have something covering the top of it, maybe a piece of cardboard or a layer of newspaper shredded, in order to keep the worms moist and keep it dark for them. And that should be all you really have to do. You add your food scraps from your house, save them up, and then add them every week to the top. Kind of make sure you're spreading them out, keep the worms moving around so they're not in one spot. And eventually the bottom will start to turn into compost. The top will remain, well, it will be in the process of becoming compost. And as this bin fills up, you will add this bin to the top, making sure to keep the lid on it, of course. And eventually this middle bin will become pure compost, so you will take out the bins. It's hard to do with one hand here, but you'll take out the middle bin, throw it in your garden or something, move this one down a level, and that'll be it, really. So I guess that's all there is to say about this. I don't have any worms or newspaper, surprisingly, right now. The worms are coming in the mail because the bait shop nearby doesn't have any in stock. From what I've read, the best worms to use are called red wigglers, which you use pretty often for fishing, so you'll probably find them at a bait store. Or you can order them online like I'm going to have to do. And that's the worms you'll use. Shredded newspaper. You can also, anything you shred in your paper shredder would be good to add. Some people say that some of the computer inks that you print with might not be good, but I don't know, I think it'll be fine. And I guess that's about that. I will update later once I get the worms in there and once I get it working. I'll probably have some updates after that too, just to show you how it's working. So, hope you enjoyed this kind of different video. Maybe I'll do some more videos like this if you like them. And I'll see you later.